This was the first video that I found MovieFlame through. It was, gosh, I remember at the time. I don't know why it just blew my mind. This
Course
type
of
of reviews.
76 years.
I love
So
them.
let's start with his heritage. He comes from the Gaunt family, who were the
The
last
what?
living relatives of Salazar Slytherin himself, one of the founders of Hogwarts, who famously had the rare ability to speak to snakes.
I
The
didn't
family
even
was
know that.
100% pureblood over the course of their entire history. Merope Gaunt, Voldemort's mother, was physically and mentally
No, I was gonna say something that's mean, but I'm not gonna say it. Nope.
abused on a regular basis by her father,
No, I'm
Marvolo
very happy
Gaunt,
that I didn't
and her
say it.
brother, Morphin Gaunt. And she was thought to be a squib because her magical abilities had not revealed themselves yet. The family had a lot of gold, but it was squandered several generations before Marvolo was born. All they
That
owned
makes a
was
person very
Salazar
bitter.
Slytherin's locket and a ring that was a Gaunt family heirloom, which was actually the Resurrection Stone, one of the Deathly Hallows. Merope was taken by a rich
Stupid
and
people,
handsome
they didn't
muggle
even
boy
know that
named
they
Tom
had-
Riddle, who lived in the mansion up the way from their disgusting small house. Morphin shot a spell at him one day when she was admiring him while gardening. This of course broke the law of wizards not being allowed to use magic in front of muggles. A ministry agent came to see Morphin to give him information on his hearing because he had broken that law. Everything went south, and it turned out that the ministry agent had to call for backup, and there was a duel between Morphin and his father Marvolo and the ministry officials.
It looks like a
Marvolo and
freaking
Morphin
Swamp
of
Thing.
course lost, and Morphin was sentenced to 3 years in Azkaban, and Marvolo was sentenced to 6 months.
So if you're being honest, Voldemort never had a chance in life. He was always gonna grow up and to be what he became. It's kind of sad, a little bit.
Finally freeing Merope from her awful family. Without the constant abuse from her father and brother, her magical abilities finally manifested, and Merope
Wow.
fled the house,
Good for her.
taking nothing but Slytherin's locket.
Why?
She started giving Tom Riddle, the boy she was taken by, a love potion, and eventually they got married, and
Oh, it's
Merope
never a
became
good
pregnant
way
with the
to
person we
have
would
a
later know
marriage.
to be Lord Voldemort. Because he was conceived under a love potion, he's never able to feel or express love in his life. Merope
That's
thought that
why
since
he was a sociopath, cause he got conceived on a love potion. That's why he was a sociopath. He didn't feel any. Wow, that's interesting.
she and Tom had spent so much time together that he might actually love her, and if not that, he would at least stay for the baby. So she
So
stopped giving
sad.
him the love potion, the reason being that she didn't want to enslave the love of her life anymore. Unfortunately, she was
Anymore.
wrong, and Tom left her, alone,
who wouldn't
pregnant
be
with the
pissed?
baby. Her heartbreak made her never use magic again. Merope sold Slytherin's locket to Borgin, the owner of Borgin and Burke's, which will be important later on. Merope becomes ill, and she goes to an orphanage where she gave birth to Tom and died 1 hour later. Her last request being that the baby was named Tom for his father, Marvolo for her father, and with the surname of Riddle.
Ow.
Tom Marvolo Riddle was born on December 31st, 1926. As a baby, he hardly cried according to the matron of the orphanage.
I thought the story was gonna go. He was born into that horrible family with the uncle and the grandfather, but being born, no family, no conceivable way to feel emotions in an orphanage on your own. That still would make it make sense that he grew up into being who he was.
As he got older, it was clear that he was the spitting image of his handsome muggle father, whom he was named after. He never had any family visitors, and he scared the other children at the orphanage. Although there was never any proof that he did so, he hung a kid named Billy's bunny by the rafters after he had an argument with Billy the day before. When the kids from the orphanage were taken on a trip to the countryside, Tom and 2 other kids named Amy and Dennis went into a cave that they found. Amy and Dennis were never quite right afterwards. The only information they ever got out of them was that they went into a cave with Tom, and Tom swore that they just went exploring. Although Tom did not know he possessed magical powers, his abilities with them were very developed for his age, and he used them for his own gain and to bully other people.
I can make things move without touching them. I can make animals do what I want without training them.
But did Dumbledore not sense it, not realize it? Or did it just have to happen? Was it destiny? Was it like perceived fate that all of this had to happen how it happened? Because I can't believe Dumbledore didn't realize the evil not even evil, just who he was at the time of being a kid. But I don't think at the time you could say he was evil, and just who he was to grow up to be the most evil wizard of all time.
I can make bad things happen to people who are mean to me. I can make them hurt.
Tom collected trophies by stealing things from the kids that he bullied as sort of a reward for his acts of unkindness. When Tom was 11, he got a visit from Albus Dumbledore at the orphanage, his first ever visitor. Dumbledore explains to him what he is and what Hogwarts is. Tom's immediate reaction is, and I quote, "It's magic what I can do? I knew I was different. I knew I was special."
That's what a serial killer needs.
During this visit, we see for the first time the way he uses his charm to get what he wants. He demands to know where he can get a wand like Dumbledore's. He goes from demanding to putting on his charm and changing his face in an instant to look sincere and says, "I'm sorry, sir. I meant, please, Professor. Could you show me?"
I can't believe Dumbledore would
Now,
fall
some
for
important
it.
qualities of Tom that are revealed here include the fact that he can speak Parseltongue, meaning he can talk to snakes, just like everyone on his mother's side of the family.
I can speak to snakes too. They find me. Whisper things. Is that normal for someone like me?
Or is that maybe why he took
We
him
see
to
that
Hogwarts? Because he realized he was a descendant of Salazar Slytherin. But I can't wrap my brain around. Salazar Slytherin wasn't a good wizard either, so he had to have known.
As a kid, he is highly sufficient, secretive, and friendless. He preferred to operate on his own, traits we will of course see later on when he gets older. We also see that he showed contempt for anything that tied him to other people, or anything that made him ordinary. He wished to be different, separate, and notorious. An example of this is how he felt about his name. You dislike the name Tom? There are a lot of Toms. Later on, of course, we know he would drop his name and give himself a new one. After Dumbledore met Tom, his initial thoughts on the boy were this: his ability to speak to serpents did not make me nearly as uneasy as his obvious instinct for cruelty, secrecy, and domination. Tom came to Hogwarts and was placed in Slytherin almost the second the Sorting Hat hit his head.
Slytherin!
While at school, Tom used his charm and never showed signs of outward arrogance or aggression that he had shown Dumbledore that day in the orphanage. According to Dumbledore, he drew the attention and sympathy of almost all the staff as soon as he arrived because he was an unusually talented and very good-looking orphan. He seemed polite, quiet, and thirsty for knowledge.
When I first met young Mr. Riddle, he was a quiet, albeit brilliant boy committed to becoming a first-rate wizard. If the monster existed, it was buried deep within.
Tom was one of the top students of the school and became a prefect in his 5th year. While at school, Tom was obsessed with his parentage, and he searched for evidence that his father went to Hogwarts in every way he could think of, but didn't find anything. He of course thought it was his father that was the wizard, because his mother, and I quote, had succumbed to the shameful human weakness of death. This is showing the first signs that he despised death. When he couldn't find anything on his father...
What about this? No, I was gonna say despising women, but that doesn't make sense. No, just because she died.
Tom Riddle, he assumed that his father wasn't a wizard. So that's when he dropped his name Tom Riddle and took on the name Lord Voldemort.
Surely you didn't think I was going to keep my filthy muggle father's name? No. I fashioned myself a new name. A name I knew wizards everywhere would one day fear to speak.
Voldemort is loosely translated to flight from death, which of course is his biggest fear in life. Just another brilliant idea from author J.K. Rowling. After he found no trace of his father in the magical world, he started to search for evidence of his mother's side of the family, and found Marvolo Gaunt, his grandfather, whom he was named after. While at school, he got a group of dedicated friends, and I say friends for want of a better word, because as Dumbledore stated, Lord Voldemort has never had a friend, nor do I believe that he ever wanted one. These friends would eventually become the first generation of Death Eaters, Lord Voldemort's followers. These friends were rigidly controlled by Tom, and they were never detected in open wrongdoing, although in their 7 years of Hogwarts marked a number of nasty incidents that they were never satisfactorily linked to. After Tom finished his 5th year at Hogwarts, he went on summer holiday and took a visit to the old family Gaunt house where Merope grew up. He found his uncle Morphin there. Morphin was wearing the Gaunt family ring, and he tried to attack Voldemort, thinking he was Tom Riddle Sr., the man his sister had run off with, until Voldemort spoke in parcel tongue to him, and Morphin realized he wasn't Tom Riddle Sr. Voldemort asked Morphin who he was referring to, and Morphin told him about the Muggle family that lived in the mansion up the way, and how Tom Riddle Sr. had abandoned his mother while pregnant with him. Voldemort stupefied Morphin, took his wand, and went up to the Riddle mansion. He found his father and his Muggle grandparents at the dinner table and killed them all with Morphin's wand. He then returned to the Gaunt House, used extremely advanced magic, especially for his 16-year-old self, to modify Morphin's memory and make him think that he was the one who killed the Riddles, and was proud of it. Then he stole the ring from his uncle, placed Morphin's wand back and unstupefied him, and left. When the Ministry came to the Gaunt House, Morphin bragged that he had killed the Riddles, which was exactly Lord Voldemort's plan. And the Ministry saw that Morphin's wand was the one that killed the family. They never did any more digging into it, because it looked like a closed case. Morphin spent the rest of his life in Azkaban. The only words he ever spoke for the rest of his life were, "He'll kill me for losing the ring." During his 6th year, Voldemort starts to research Horcruxes, a way to make himself immortal. He goes to his favorite professor, Professor Slughorn, and asks him how it works.
I wonder though, why was he so afraid of that? What was it? Because it was a natural human thing, and he wanted to be above. He wanted to be special. He wanted to be above it all. He said he wanted to be nefarious. He wanted his name to be never forgotten. And how mad he was at his mother for dying because it was so normal. That makes sense.
This is an object in which a person has concealed part of their soul. One splits one's soul and hides part of it in an object. By doing so, you are protected should you be attacked and your body destroyed.
Protected?
That part of your soul that is hidden lives on. In other words, you cannot die.
And how does one split his soul, sir?
I think you already know the answer to that, Tom.
Murder.
Yes. Killing rips the soul apart. It is a violation against nature.
Voldemort then asks him whether it would be possible to split the soul into 7 pieces, the most powerfully magic number. During his 6th year, he, the heir to Slytherin, opened the Chamber of Secrets that led to the death of a Muggle-born girl named Myrtle. This is when he made his first Horcrux. He used Myrtle's death to split his soul for the first time, and placed that part of the soul in his diary. Later, when he finds out that the school might close because of this, he gets scared and reacts by framing Hagrid, a half-giant, for opening the chamber, and becomes a hero, getting a special award for services to the school. During his remaining years at Hogwarts, it's unknown exactly when, but Voldemort used the death of his father, Tom Riddle Sr., to make the second Horcrux in the Gaunt ring he stole from Morphin. During his remaining years, he also talked to the Grey Lady, the ghost of Ravenclaw, who also happened to be Rowena Ravenclaw's daughter, and uses his charm to get the information he wants out of her. I had no idea. He was flattering. He seemed to understand, to sympathize. The Grey Lady tells him about how she stole the diadem from her mother and hid it in a hollow tree in a forest in Albania. Voldemort finished at Hogwarts with top grades in every exam he took, and got many offers from professors to set up job interviews to work in the Ministry of Magic, but he refused them all. He instead approached the then headmaster, Professor Dippet, if he could remain at Hogwarts as a teacher to teach defense against the dark arts. Hogwarts was the first and only place that he felt at home, and he wanted to stay because he had unlocked so many secrets, more than anybody had before him. He also thought it would be a useful recruiting ground to build himself an army. Dippet says that he's too young, but he should come back in a few years, and then he can teach. Voldemort then gets a job at a shop called Borgin & Burke's in Nocturne Alley, which I mentioned earlier. This is a decision that many people thought was a waste of his many talents. While there, his job was to use his charm to make people part with their treasures for sale, and he was very gifted at it. One lady he visited very often was named Hepzibah Smith. He uses his charm to get on her good side, by bringing her flowers, kissing her hand, and just being overall handsome and mannerly, making this hideous woman feel beautiful. She shows him 2 artifacts that she's most proud of, which are 2 of the 4 heirlooms of the 4 founders of Hogwarts. The Hufflepuff Cup, which she inherited because she was a descendant of Hufflepuff, and the Locket of Salazar Slytherin, which she bought from Borgin. Borgin had of course acquired this from Voldemort's own mother when she sold it to him while she was pregnant with Voldemort, which I mentioned earlier. Voldemort leaves and returns 2 days later. He takes the cup and the locket, kills Hepzibah Smith, and makes his third Horcrux in Hufflepuff's cup. Once again, we see how he takes trophies for his wrongdoings, just as he did when he was at the orphanage. He then modifies the memory of Hepzibah's house elf to make her think that she accidentally poisoned her master. And again, it looked like a closed case, so the Ministry never investigated it further, until they realized that the cup and locket were gone. By the time they realized this, however, Voldemort had resigned from his job at Borgin and Burke's and had vanished, and would not return for 10 years. During these 10 years, he continues to find, make, and hide these Horcruxes. To make the Locket Horcrux, he kills a Muggle tramp. He then goes to the
God, I would love to see a freaking series, standalone series, following Voldemort like this during those 10 years. It could be amazing if it's written correctly. Gosh, him building the Horcruxes. I mean, this is why probably I am not that... I'll watch it, I'll probably still enjoy it. But why I'm not that excited for the TV series reboot they're trying to do. Because I don't believe in demolishing a universe you already built, even though if some parts weren't as successful as the other. Since there are so many stories, you can expand on it. And just entirely annihilating a whole universe doesn't make sense to me. Just so we could retell a story with maybe a bit more detail in it. Just expand, there's so much freaking stories to tell. That's just so unimaginative in my opinion. And a bit lazy.
Albanian forest, where the Grey Lady had told him the lost diadem of Ravenclaw lay. He found it in the hollow tree just as she said. He then killed an Albanian peasant to make his 5th Horcrux in the diadem. He starts to find hiding places for the 5 Horcruxes he's made so far. He gives the diary to his loyal follower Lucius Malfoy, with the instructions that one day he will send it to Hogwarts and the part of the soul of Voldemort that lives in it will open the Chamber of Secrets again, which I will discuss later on. This Horcrux was sort of a throwaway one for Lord Voldemort, used less as a safeguard, but more as a weapon. He hid the ring in the Gaunt house where his mother, uncle, and grandfather had lived, in the exact place that he had stolen it in the first place. He used magical enchantments to conceal it. He gave the cup to Bellatrix Lestrange, another one of his loyal followers, and told her to put it in her highly secure vault at Gringotts, guarded by a dragon. He put the locket in the cave he visited while at the orphanage, and made the kids Amy and Dennis never the same. To hide the 5th and final Horcrux he's made so far, the diadem, he finally comes out of hiding, and uses his visit to Hogwarts to meet with Dumbledore to his advantage. He meets with Dumbledore to discuss the job position that Headmaster Dippet had promised him years ago. His appearance after his 10 years of vanishment is described as follows. He was no longer the handsome Tom Riddle. It was as though his features had been burned and blurred. They were waxy and oddly distorted, and the whites of his eyes now had a permanently bloody look, and his face was as pale as the snow. Dumbledore refuses to give him the job position that he was promised, and Voldemort puts a curse on the job, making it impossible for one Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher to stay for more than 1 school year. He then goes to the Room of Requirement, a secret room that opens and becomes whatever you need it to be. What he needed was a place to hide something, and there are mountains and mountains of things that people have had to hide over the many years that the castle existed. Voldemort hides the diadem in there, thinking that nobody would be able to find it. Over the next 15 years, Voldemort goes on to recruit giants, dementors, and more of his followers, Death Eaters, and becomes the most powerful magical tyrant the world has ever seen. People are afraid to say his name, and cower in fear at the mention of him.
Do not speak his name.
He kills hundreds of people and takes over the magical world, spreading fear and chaos all over. It seems as though nothing can stop him, not even Dumbledore's alliance, the Order of the Phoenix. That is until he is told of a prophecy by one of his Death Eaters, Severus Snape. The prophecy states as follows. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. This prophecy, he realizes, matches a baby boy named Harry Potter. He decides to take care of this problem, and his only threat by finishing the 1-year-old boy off. Voldemort not knowing that by doing this, he would mark Harry as his equal, just as the prophecy said, thereby setting the prophecy in stone. Harry's mother jumped in between Harry and Voldemort, and died saving her son. This put a protection on Harry through the power of love. So when Voldemort went to kill Harry, the protection his mother had just given him by sacrificing herself made the killing curse rebound and hit Voldemort, which should have killed him, but didn't, because his soul still lived on in several of the Horcruxes he had already made. When the curse rebounded, a part of Voldemort's soul latched itself onto Harry, making Harry the Horcrux Voldemort never meant to make.
A part of Voldemort's soul latched itself onto the only living thing it could find. Harry himself.
Voldemort was barely alive, just a part of a soul clinging to life.
Some say he died. Can't swallow in my opinion. Nope. I reckon he's out there still. Too tired to carry on.
The only power he still possessed was to latch onto others' bodies. He fled to the
So the ironic part is, if that Voldemort didn't let the fear of the prophecy get to him and leave Harry Potter alone, he wouldn't have set it in motion by making him equal, because he went to fight him, and if you're acknowledging that you need to kill this boy before he becomes powerful enough, then you're acknowledging that he's equal and he's able to defeat you. He might have actually succeeded in the First Wizarding War, and he would never have to deal with Harry Potter. Irony is amazing.
Albanian forest where he had found the lost diadem and jumped from animal to animal, his preference being snakes, but it killed the animals quickly. After 10 years of this suffering, a man that worked at Hogwarts, Professor Quirrell, came across Voldemort in the forest while researching and allowed Voldemort to latch onto him. He wore a turban to cover Voldemort's face on the back of his head and drank unicorn blood to keep his master alive. Their eventual goal was to get the Sorcerer's Stone and drink its elixir of life to get Voldemort back to his full strength. But once again, he was stopped by the boy he marked as his equal 10 years before this, Harry Potter. The protection Harry's mother gave him allowed him to kill Quirrell and forced Lord Voldemort to leave his body. Voldemort then fled back to the Albanian forest again. A few months later, the diary, the first Horcrux he made, was still in Lucius Malfoy's possession until he put it in a cauldron of a girl named Ginny Weasley, along with her other school books, assuring that it would make its way to Hogwarts. This set in stone the plan that Voldemort had all along to reopen the Chamber of Secrets. The part of Voldemort's soul that lived in the diary possessed Ginny Weasley and made her open the chamber.
Why? Because I told her to. You'll find I can be very persuasive.
He then captured her and was using her to make himself permanently brought back to life, but was again stopped by Harry Potter, who destroyed the Horcrux with the fang from the Basilisk, the monster known to the Chamber of Secrets, thereby destroying the first Horcrux. 1 year later, one of his followers, Peter Pettigrew, otherwise known as Wormtail, found Voldemort in the Albanian forest with the help of rats. Voldemort told Wormtail how to make a temporary body. With the help of spells Voldemort created himself, his snake Nagini and her snake venom, along with a potion with unicorn blood. This gave him a very temporary and weak body, but it was enough to carry out the plans to get his permanent body. Wormtail then brought him a ministry agent named Bertha Jorkins, who Voldemort tortured to get information out of her, and then killed her and used her death to make his final Horcrux in his snake Nagini. In total, his soul was split in 8 pieces. Himself, of course, the diary, the ring, the cup, the locket, the diadem, Harry, which he still didn't know about, and Nagini. However, at this point, the diary is destroyed, so there are only 7 left. Anyway, Bertha tells him about the Triwizard Tournament as he tortures her, that is going to take place at Hogwarts, and informs him about one of his most loyal followers who is in hiding and is still alive, even though everyone else thinks him dead, Barty Crouch Jr. Voldemort reaches out to him, and they devise a plan to disguise Crouch Jr. as Professor Mad-Eye Moody, and he hoodwinks the tournament to force Harry to play in it. And Crouch Jr. makes sure that he wins. To win, you must touch the cup first, which Crouch Jr. had turned into a portkey, that when Harry touches it, it would lead him right to the Riddle Mansion. This is where Voldemort gets a full and permanent body, with a concoction made from 3 ingredients. A bone from his father that they took from his grave, flesh given by a servant, which was Wormtail's own hands, and finally, blood of a foe. Voldemort wanted it to be Harry's blood, so that the magical protection his mother gave to him wouldn't work anymore, because Harry's blood would then be in his system, canceling out the protection. Voldemort can now touch Harry without getting hurt or dying. Voldemort's new appearance was described as whiter than a skull, with wide, livid scarlet eyes, and a nose that was as flat as a snake's, with slits for nostrils. He tried to kill Harry, but was stopped by the most recent victims of his killing curse, including Harry's parents, coming out of his wand because of something called Priori Incantatem. Harry escapes and informs the Ministry of Voldemort's return, but no one believes him. Voldemort takes advantage of this ignorance from the Ministry to build his army again, recruit giants and Dementors and other magical beings, and also break out locked up Death Eaters in Azkaban. Finally, he reveals himself 1 year later, and this is the start of the Second Wizarding War. Voldemort once again spreads chaos and fear, and eventually takes over the Ministry of Magic. He also takes over Hogwarts after the planned death of Albus Dumbledore, reinstating Snape as headmaster, along with the Carrows, who were siblings that were also Death Eaters. Voldemort finds out through torturing the wand maker Ollivander that he and Harry's wands are brothers because they share a tail feather from the same phoenix, which is why he hasn't been able to kill Harry. He decides to go after the most powerful wand in the world, the Elder Wand, one of the Deathly Hallows. He eventually finds out that it was last in Dumbledore's possession and is buried with him now. He goes to Dumbledore's grave and gets the Elder Wand, and thinks he is even more unstoppable than he was. Somewhere around this time, he conceived a child with Bellatrix Lestrange and his daughter, Delphine.
That is such a weird concept, imagining those two together. Ugh. And Bellatrix must have been ecstatic. But another question I have, which I don't understand, is how did Dumbledore get the Elder Wand in the first place? That's another question I would love answered.
He was born in mid to late 1998, before the Battle of Hogwarts, which I'll talk about in a minute. Voldemort finds out that the cup from the Lestrange's vault is gone, and he kills everyone in the room. He goes to check the other Horcrux hiding spots, including the Gaunt House, where the ring is gone, and he assumes is destroyed. Then the cave, and the locket is also gone, and he again assumes it was destroyed. There are only 3 Horcruxes left that he knows of: the diadem, Nagini, and the cup. One of them isn't safe because Harry already has it, the cup that he just stole. He decides that Nagini is never leaving his side again.
Come, Nagini. I need to keep you safe.
He then gets word that Harry's in Hogsmeade, the village right next to Hogwarts. So he takes his entire army to Hogwarts, and the Battle of Hogwarts takes place. During this battle, Hufflepuff's cup is destroyed, and the diadem is destroyed as well. There are only 2 Horcruxes left, Harry, which he still does not know about, and Nagini. After many hours of battle, Voldemort tells his forces to retreat, and asks that Harry meet him in the forest to face his destiny. Harry obeys and comes to the forest, and Voldemort kills him, thereby killing the Horcrux he never knew he made inside Harry. Through some extreme measures, Harry comes back, which Voldemort does not know, as he shows Harry's supposed dead body to his friends and family. Neville Longbottom, one of Harry's friends and allies, steps forward and kills the snake with Godric Gryffindor's sword, destroying the last Horcrux, finally making Voldemort vulnerable to death. After Neville does this, the fight begins again, and in the chaos, Harry gets up and faces Voldemort for their final confrontation, which finally leads to the death of Lord Voldemort, otherwise known as Tom Riddle, who died on May 2nd, 1998. Because of the damage he did to